These are your Unit 1A, Day 3 notes. In these notes, we'll be working on Standard 2A, I can rewrite and evaluate expressions, and Standard 3B, I can make viable arguments and decisions. For Standard 2A, you're going to be solving expressions that involve addition of positive and negative numbers, and you are going to explain why an answer would be negative or positive when you add the integers. So, let's look. Positive and negative integers. So the first thing you need to know, which may be pretty obvious, is that integers can be positive or negative. And integers, you guys, that's a fancy way to say numbers, all real numbers. So integers, all positive and negative numbers are integers, okay? So when I say integer, I'm referring to all positive and negative numbers. All right, well, let's move on. So let's look at the numbers on a number line. We have 0 right here, all right? And all the numbers to the right of 0 are positive numbers. And all the numbers to the left of 0 are negative numbers. In this class, I will represent positive numbers with the color blue and negative numbers with the color red. So there's some important things to keep in mind when you're working with positive and negative numbers. And as the numbers move this way, they get smaller. As the numbers move this way, they get bigger. You don't need to put that part in your notes. So, as the numbers move this way, they get smaller, and as the numbers move this way, they get bigger, which is interesting because if you look at it, we have the number -10. -10 is smaller than -9 because as the numbers move this way, they get smaller. As the numbers move this way, they get bigger. And 10 here is bigger than 9. So it's something to be mindful of. The bigger the negative, the smaller its value. So let's write this down. Okay, I wrote that rule down, and I want you to copy it in your notes. So here we go. Negative numbers get smaller as they move further from 0. Example, -10 is smaller than -9. Positive numbers get larger as they get further from 0. Example, 10 is bigger than 9. So what I want you to do right now is pause the video and get this recorded in your notes. And make sure you understand what I'm saying here. If not, just ask me. All right, now we're going to visualize positive and negative numbers. So here we have 3 red people, which represents -3. And we have 3 blue people, which represents +3. So if we're looking at this and pretend they're playing tug of rope, who do you think would win? If you said neither, ding, 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 you are correct. And why is it? Because if you combine them, they equal 0. There is not one side that is stronger than the other. So the rule is a number added to its opposite, -3 and 3. Those are opposites. So it's the same absolute value, same number. One is negative, one is positive. So if you combine adding, because that's what we're thinking about, remember, in this video is adding. If we add -3 plus 3, you're going to get 0. Okay? The answer when you add a number and its opposite is always 0. It's called a 0 pair. So we'll put that right here. Why? Because it's a 0 pair. That's why. All right? So another example, if you look right here, if we have 9 plus -9, it equals 0. Why is that? Because they are opposites. All right, if we have a positive 2 and we add that to a negative 2, it equals 0. Okay? Same thing over here. We have positive 333, and if we add that to negative 333, what do we get? 0. So when you add a number and its opposite, it's equal to 0. And you can also think about it. All right, I owe Lucy $10, so I got negative $10, and then I give her $10, I'm back at 0. If it's negative 20 degrees out and then the temperature goes up by 20, where am I at? I'm at 0, because a number added to its opposite is always 0. Okay, now we're going to practice calculating the sum or adding two numbers together by using 0 pairs. And remember, a 0 pair, a number and its opposite is always equal to 0. So here's a good way to visualize it and use that understanding to add positive and negative numbers. Here's what you're going to do. You have a 5 here. This is a positive 5. The blue plus signs represent positive numbers. So positive 5, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus signs. Great. Now we have negative 3. 1, 2, 3 negatives. You always have your top number in your expression or equation on top. And then you have your second number goes below, because that helps you create those 0 pairs. Now, one positive plus one negative is equal to 0. So what you're going to do here is we cross off our 0 pairs. Positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative. You can see now here we don't have any more negatives to match this up with. So this is what is left, and that would be our answer. So what is left here? 2. So what does that mean? That means 5 plus negative 3 is equal to positive 2. Why is that? There are 2 positives left when we create our 0 pairs. All right, so now I'm going to do another one, then eventually you'll try on your own. So let's calculate the sum by using what? 0 pairs. My top number is negative 5. So I need to draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 negatives. My bottom number is positive 3. So I'm going to go ahead and right underneath it, line them up. I'm going to put my 3 positives. So 1, 2, 3. All right. I have created a visual representation of this number sentence. And now I'm going to calculate the answer by finding my 0 pairs. 1 positive to 1 negative is equal to a 0 pair. So we got a pair there, pair there, pair there. And what are we left with? We have these 2. They don't have any pairs. There's no positives to go with it. So what does that mean? That means negative 5 plus 3 is equal to negative 2. All right, one more. We have negative 5 plus negative 3. All right, so top number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Bottom number 1, 2, 3. All right, so I'm looking at this now and I'm like, oh shoot, these are all negatives. How am I supposed to make a 0 pair? Every negative and every positive, you got to pair them up to make that 0 pair and cross them off. So what am I supposed to do here? Guess what? There are no 0 pairs. So everything here is your answer. So negative 5 plus negative 3 is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We can see these are all negatives. So negative 5 plus negative 3 is equal to negative 8. Negative 5 plus negative 3 is equal to negative 8. So you can see here, these are all involve like 5 and 3 in some manner, but the answer changes based upon which numbers are negative and which numbers are positive. So you need to pause the video and make sure you have all of this beautiful stuff recorded. It's important. Okay. All right. Now we're going to look at it again, visualizing it to really get that conceptual understanding before we use our calculator. So here's another way to look at it. We have our red people, which represent negative numbers. We have 1, 2, 3. All right, so we got a negative 3 right there. And then we look at how many blue people do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to write that as a positive 4. So I have my people written as positive and negative numbers. So the next step here is, what is there more of? Is there more negative or are there more positive? Well, we can see here that there are more positives. All right, so there's more positives. And how many more? Well, we got 4 and 3, so we can see that there is 1 more. So how many more? 1. And we know that it's a positive because there's 1 more positive. So your answer would be positive 1. All right, let's look at this next one. How many red people do we have here? 5. So that means that that represents with a negative 5. How many blue people? We got 2, so that's a positive 2. Now, to find the answer, we need to determine, are there more negatives or positives? I look here, there are 5 negatives. So we know my answer is going to be negative. All right, and how many more negatives? Well, we got 2 positives, 3 negatives. So that means there are 3 more, and we know our answer is negative. So my answer is negative 3 because there are 3 more red people or negative numbers than there are positive numbers, okay? So this is a lot of information, a lot of talking on one page. Moving on, it'll get a little easier once you just grab that calculator. So what I want you to do right now is make sure that you have all of this information in your notes. It's very important that you have all of this. So pause the video, get it all wrote down, and then let's move on to the next one. All right, so what you're going to do now is a little work on your own. You are going to solve these equations by using 0 pairs. So what does that mean? That means that you are going to be drawing those little plus and minuses. So I have number 4. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 negatives. My first number. My second number is positive 4. So that goes below. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I got to match them up. For every 1 positive to 1 negative, it's a 0 pair. So got all those partners. What the heck? There's nothing left. Well, that's because my answer is 0. Because look right here. A number and its opposite is always equal to 0. Negative 4 plus 4, those are opposites. So my answer is 0. So what I want you to do right now is I want you to pause the video. And I want you to solve these problems by creating 0 pairs. Draw these positive and negative numbers. All right, pause, try. Okay, hopefully you tried these on your own and you drew the pretty plus and minus signs to figure it out. And you got the same answer as me, okay? This one's negative 10. Remember, a positive and a negative, 1 positive per 1 negative makes a 0 pair. We do not have any positives here to match up, so we just count up our negatives. All right, here the answer should be positive 5, and here the answer is negative 4. If you did not get those answers, I want you to take a look and see if you can't find your mistake. A lot of times, if you don't line these up perfectly, you might find yourself not lining them up and then creating a 0 pair that isn't actually a 0 pair, okay? So Pause the video, fix your mistakes if you need to. If not, then let's move on. Now here, what you're going to do is you're going to calculate the sum using your preferred method. What that means is you can draw the people or you can use the plus and minuses. It's up to you. I want you to pause the video and do these problems on your own. Okay. Hopefully you tried all of these on your own. I know there's a lot going on here, so just look at one problem at a time so it's not overwhelming. I did smiley faces instead of stick figures because I'm not that good at drawing. You can see I already have a hard enough time writing my numbers clearly. So here are the two ways, and remember you got to pick which way you wanted. You didn't have to do both. And then here are the answers. So I want you to go ahead right now, and I want you to look through these answers. So we have 5, -5, 0, -3, and -7. If you did not get these answers, I want you to pause the video and find your mistake and fix it. If you got these answers, bravo, good job. Let's move on to the next page. All right, hold on. Actually, before we move on to the next page, no matter what, you got to make sure you have this information in your notes. For this one, remember, you guys, if you have the answers, you only had to have one method, not both, okay? So now, let's move on to the next one. And when I say next one, I mean next page. Okay, so here is our last page, and this is standard 2B. This is where you're explaining what you know. This is really important. This is like, the heart of math. Okay, great, you can figure out an answer, but why is that answer? That's important, all right? So that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to explain it. So it's going to be a lot of writing here, but then we'll be done, so you got it. All right, so the first one, we have these little boxes here, and this represents any number. Any number. So this is a plain box right there, so that represents any positive number, and this is a negative box, so that represents any negative number. So the reason we have it like that is because these are rules that work for any positive and any negative numbers. So if we look here, if we are adding a positive and a negative number, is the answer always positive, always negative, or can it be both? Think about it. Thinking? All right. I hope that you thought it was both. It could be positive. It could be negative. It depends on which number has the bigger absolute value. Which one is bigger? So if we have 10 plus -9, well, 10 is a bigger absolute value. So that means our answer is going to be positive. So 10 plus -9 would be positive because there's more positives. But what if we did 9 plus -10? Well, there's one more negative. So my answer would be negative. So when we are adding a positive and a negative, or a negative and a positive, the answer can always be both. And why is that? Well, here's why. I'm going to write it down right here, and you're going to copy it in your note. Okay, so here is why. The answer is the same sign as the number with the largest absolute value. Remember, absolute value is how far a number is away from 0. So if my positive is farther away from 0, my answer would be positive. If my negative is farther away from 0, then my answer would be negative. And that is why it is both. So please make sure you have this in your notes. The answer is the same sign as the number with the largest absolute value. All right. Now let's go ahead and move on to the next, as long as you have all this information down. If not, get it down before you move on. All right. So now we're looking at a situation where we have any negative number added to any negative number. So think about it. Do you think that the answer is positive, negative, or both? All right. If you said negative. You are correct. Why is that? Because we're getting more negative. We start negative and then we add and get more negative. It's negative 10 degrees out and then it gets 5 degrees colder. Negative 10 plus negative 5 is negative 15. So when you're adding two negative numbers, the answer is always negative. Okay, so this is what you should make sure that you record in your notes. When you add two numbers with the same sign, the answer is that same sign. Okay, so it stays the same. A negative plus a negative is equal to a negative. Negative plus a negative equals a negative. When you add two numbers with the same sign, the answer is that same sign. All right, so now let's move here. We have any positive number plus any positive number. Do you think that answer is always positive, always negative, or could it be both? Think about this rule up here when you're thinking. All right, You're thinking. If you said positive, you are correct. And why is that? When you add two numbers with the same sign, that answer is that same sign. Okay, so you should have this in your notes. When you add two numbers with the same sign, the answer is that same sign. So what does that mean? A positive plus a positive equals a positive. A positive plus a positive equals a positive. All right, little repeat from up here. A negative plus a negative equals a negative. And a positive plus a negative could be both. All right, so make sure you have this all in your notes. This video was super long. They're not always all this long, so good job hanging in there. Make sure you have everything written down, and we'll talk tomorrow.